In the early 1960s, a missionary named Don Richardson moved with his wife to live among the Sawi tribe in Indonesia. They learned the language, they built relationships, and eventually they began sharing the gospel, but it failed. As Richardson told the story of Jesus, this tribe of people, they admired Judas, the betrayer, because in their culture, they celebrated deception. You see, Richardson, he realized that they were not rejecting the gospel. They were interpreting it through a worldview that he did not understand. So he stopped preaching and he started to listen. And he learned of a tradition amongst this tribe of people called the peace child, where enemy tribes, they would exchange sons as a guarantee of peace. So when Richardson retold the gospel as God giving his son as the ultimate peace child, the people finally understood and they finally responded. The gospel, it didn't change, but the listening did. If I'm honest with you, I can't speak of around the world as a whole because I don't live around the world. I live here. We don't listen very well. We love to talk. We love to have the last word, but we don't listen very well. If you don't believe me, just go look at the comment section on the internet. People love to talk. People love to have their word. They love to say something. But listening, understanding, it's not our strength. But if we're going to impact people's lives, if we're going to impact people's lives for Christ, we have to be incredible listeners. We have to be those that want to hear. We have to be those that want to understand the people that we are interacting with. And if we aren't willing to listen, we don't have much to say. And Paul gives us an example of this in Acts chapter 17. If you have your Bibles, turn to Acts chapter 17. We're going to be in verses 16 through 23 today. And Paul gives us this example of being a listener. Look at verse 16. Acts 17, verse 16. Now, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with Paul, and some said, "What does this babbler wish to say?" And others said, "He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to Areopagus, saying, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So Paul, standing in the midst of Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, 'To the unknown God.' What therefore you worship is unknown, this I proclaim to you." If you're taking notes, the first thing I want you to notice is this. I want you to notice the prompt. Notice the prompt. And right there in verse 16, if you look back, it says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw the foreign idols. All this place, it was full of idols. So again, he's in this place, he's in Athens. He sees all of these foreign idols and his spirit is provoked. But what we're going to see, and as we just read, he doesn't react rashly. Being provoked, it didn't cause him to condemn, it caused him to listen. And listening often begins with recognizing what stirs us. and then taking that emotion to wisdom. You see, it's not hard to look around and say we're provoked. We look around the world and people say things or people do things and we're provoked. And when we are provoked, what often happens is we react rashly, harshly, rather than asking the question of, wait, why did that provoke me and what is it that they're saying? It should provoke us. You know why? Do you know why we need to be provoked? Because if we're not provoked, we don't do anything. And so instead of being provoked and reacting harshly, we provoke and say, why did that do something and stir something within me? And as Paul sees here, well, they're full of idols. He was provoked because there was something wrong. There's a problem. They were rejecting the one true God. So he didn't go in there waving his finger and saying, you bunch of dummies. How dare you? You're all going to hell. You don't know anything. Instead, he said, I need to understand what's going on here. I need to understand these people. So, church, I need to understand something. You're going to be provoked. Accept it. Just like we teach our children, being provoked doesn't mean you get to react however you want. And we would do good to take our own advice as parents. Grow up a little bit. We don't react. We don't let that being provoked take us to this place of, well, I'm going to tell you. Instead, it should drive us to say, wait, I need to understand what they're thinking. I need to understand why they think that. And if I'm going to understand that, I need to listen to them. I need to know them. So Paul was provoked. You and I, we will be provoked. Go and accept it. It's a matter of, do you allow that to take you to a place of wisdom? Or do you allow it to take you to a place of foolishness? The second thing that we see here from Paul is I want you to notice the reasonableness. Notice the reasonableness. Right there in verse 7, it tells us, he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. He just reasoned with people in the synagogue, in the marketplace. Again, he wasn't fighting people. He was dialoguing with people. Listening, it guided his conviction and it allowed him to meet people where they already were. We need to be those that are reasonable. We need to be those that are willing to listen. You know why? I don't want to talk to unreasonable people. They don't interest me, they give me a headache, and they're annoying, quite honestly. And so even if it's someone that is a different viewpoint or the same viewpoint of me, if they're unreasonable, there's nothing I can do because you're not willing to listen, even if I'm willing to listen. So Christians, we need to be the most reasonable people on the planet. But often we're not. We're unreasonable. We're silly. We wander off into silly things. But Paul says he just reasoned with them. He just talked to them. He just listened to them. He says whoever was there, it didn't matter who it was. He just sat and talked to them. And the thing that you and I need to understand is if we're willing to just talk to somebody, they'll tell us a whole lot of things. They'll tell us everything that we need to know or understand about them. But because we won't be quiet long enough to hear them, we really don't know where they are. I think I told you before, I have a radio show podcast where I interview like Christian recording artists. And so when I was preparing to do this, I'd never done this in my life. And so what I began to do, I began to listen to people that did interviews, famous people that did interviews, so that I could learn from the greatest interviewers. And so I won't tell you who I listen to, because some of them I'm not going to endorse, but they're good interviewers, all right? You can ask me later. Here's what I learned. People that are great interviewers are great listeners. And here's what they do. They ask great questions. You know what they do next? They be quiet. Be quiet. And let the other person talk. And let me tell you what I've learned by doing this. Well, I'm not perfect at it. When I ask a good question and I close my mouth, they will tell me more than I ever asked. They'll tell me way more interesting stories. They'll tell me way more interesting things, and they'll give me way more details if I will just get out of the way. And the second thing is this. They're going to tell me something in there that I want to know more about. They're going to tell me something in there that I want to ask more questions and get a greater understanding of. When we're those that ask great questions and will be quiet, then we are those that will hear from other people. People are dying to talk. You don't believe me? Again, just go to the internet. People love to talk. They want somebody to hear them. And so we live in a world where people are dying to be heard. And so we would just be reasonable people who ask genuine questions about who they are. We're not trying to trick them. We're not trying to do gotcha moments. I'm going to ask you a question. I can't wait to tie you in a knot. Have you ever stolen anything? Thief. Gotcha. You ever had a bad thought about somebody? Murderer! Bam! Gotcha. You're a murderer and a thief going to hell, pal. I can't wait to talk to that person more. I'm ready to talk to you, you reasonable human being. Let's talk more. Let me tell you all about my life. No, I'm going as far away from you as I possibly can. We care about the other person. We care about them. We're reasonable. We see them as valuable. You know why we see them as valuable? Because they are valuable. You know why? They're made in the image of God, and Jesus died for them just like he died for you. And so Paul was reasonable. He was provoked. That's what moves him into this place to listen and ask questions and to reason with these people. But he was reasonable as he did it. And whoever showed up, he was willing to talk to him. He was willing to hear him. The third thing I want you to notice is this, is I want you to notice the curiosity. Notice the curiosity. Look down at verse 18 through 21. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with Paul, and some saying, "What does this babbler wish to say?" And others said, "He seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities because he was preaching Jesus and the resurrection." And they took him and brought him to Areopagus, saying, "May we know what the new teaching is that you're presenting? For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what these things mean." Now all the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So on the other side of this, Paul's been reasoning with these people, just been talking with people. Anybody show up, he would just spend time with them. And as he would do this, and he would tell what he believed, and he would reason these things out, these real smart philosophers, they hear it, they're around, they get wind of it. And some of them are saying, what does this babbler have to say? And some of them are like, he's speaking of these foreign divinities. But here's what every one of them were. You ready? Curious. They were curious. And that curiosity wasn't just in his message. It was in the messenger. It was the way that he carried himself, the way that he reasoned, the way that he talked to people. To the point where they said, you know what? Some of us think you're nuts, and some of us just want to know more about this stuff that you believe because we're just curious in general. So can we kind of bring you to this place of learning? Will you just kind of talk to us? We just want to hear about it. We just want to hear more about what you have to say, even though a lot of us don't even believe it or think it makes any sense. And so we did. What we have to understand is we should live our lives in a way where we're reasonable people that people want to be around us. Will they hear enough about our lives and who we are and what guides our lives? Where they're curious. They're curious. And they say, will you just tell me more of why you're the way that you are? You're reasonable. You have real convictions. They seem to guide the way that you live your life. They seem to change the way that you live your life. Can I just hear more about that? They went to him. He didn't corner them in Exxon parking lot. He lived his life in a way where they said, we want you to come to us. We want to hear more of what you have to say. And if you were to read this full text, he didn't be like, and you jerks that called me babblers, get out. I'm not interested in you. I don't want to hear anything from you. He just knew they're curious. Can I be honest? We need to live our lives in ways where people are curious of this. Why are you the way that you are? But in a good way. Right? In a good way. If I'm just being transparent, the way that Christianity is conducted in the public marketplace and those that are in the spotlights and those that are loud on the internet are people that me, a fellow follower of Jesus, I'm not even curious in them. I'm not even interested in them. We're often, I look and I say, I'm embarrassed. I say, why are we doing it this way? Why do we think we have to do it like this? And I don't even like us. Much less those that don't believe what we believe. Or instead, if we truly lived out what Jesus told us, follow the story of Jesus. Jesus didn't yell on the internet, right? He didn't run around blasting people. He was rejected time and time again. What did he tell his followers? If they reject you, just dust the dust off your feet and go to the next place. When people say things about you, they don't like you, you just keep going. And if you follow the story of Jesus, what happened? Every time we talked, there were crowds. Why? They were incredibly curious. Who is this guy? The things that he did, the things that he said, the way that he lived his life, people just wanted to come and see. Many of them rejected. Most of them rejected. But they wanted to see for themselves. So we need to be those that live our lives in a way where our kindness and our gentleness, our love for people, the peace that we live with, the patience that we carry, where people can at least say, I don't believe what you believe, but I like you. That's what you see in the book of Acts. It said that many people rejected. They said, we don't believe what you believe, but I like you. It said they found favor with all people. You know why? They cared about each other. They cared about other people. It's real simple. They didn't dig in and have these weird debates about weird things and get mad at each other and fight all the time and all this stuff. They cared about each other. They cared about people. And people said, I don't believe what you believe. That Jesus stuff's weird. But I like you. You're good people. You're kind. You seem to really believe what you say. Live your life in a way where people are at least curious. They're curious. Why are you the way that you are? And they want to at least hear more about it. If they're not curious about you, then don't think that just because you carry a message you believe to be true, that gives you some sort of license to speak it in their lives. You know, we have to weigh in and what are we actually telling people? You know, like I don't love buying a car, right? Like, I got to go do this thing. I go negotiate this thing. And I'm very uncomfortable. I got to build trust with that person to make that deal happen. What we're telling people is, hey, will you trust me with your eternity? And we don't think that we should earn some sort of trust in our lives to hear that message from us. Be curious. Earn the right to speak into people's lives. That's what Paul did. He was reasonable. And he lived his life in a way where people said, I don't know about this stuff, but I want to hear more from you because I'm interested in who you are. In the way that you speak it and in the way that you live it and the things that you're saying, I want to hear more of it. That's what we need to follow and understand. The last thing I want you to notice is this. I want you to notice the moment to speak. Notice the moment to speak. Look at verse 22 and 23. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you're very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship is unknown, this I proclaim to you." I love this. There's so much in these few verses. I want you just to notice what's happening. So they've just brought him to the Areopagus, this place of learning. And he says, "I perceive in every way that you're very religious." Here's what he's saying. I've taken the time to understand you. I've taken the time to notice all of these things. And he says, as I passed along, verse 23, and observed the objects of your worship, he says, as I took the time to notice the things that you worship, as I took the time to understand the things that you worship, he said, I did notice this one thing. He said, this idol, it says, to the unknown God. He says, can I tell you about him? Because I know him. And you read the rest of the text, that's what he does. He says, this thing that you've been searching for, this thing that you've been looking for, this unknown God, I know him. It's like Buddy the Elf and Santa, right? Santa's coming. I know him. Yeah, we clap for that. That's good. I'm here for it. It's good. Right? I know him. That's what Paul's saying. He said, unknown God. He said, I know you, understand you. I've seen all the stuff that you worship. I've seen all the stuff that you believe. But there's this one part I want to help you understand. Isn't that incredible? He didn't speak in this setting until he understood them. You know why? Because he knew if they don't think I understand them, if they don't think I know anything, they're not going to listen. We've got to be those that are great listeners. We've got to be those that are interested. And what makes us great listeners and makes us interested is to view the people that we interact with as valuable. And understanding that no matter what they think, no matter what they believe, they're valuable because of who they are. There's someone that's created in the image of God, and there's someone that Jesus died for. They're incredibly valuable. Yeah, but they think this. Doesn't matter what they think. Yeah, but they believe this. Doesn't matter. But they said this. Big whoop. Who cares? Who are they? Because everything that they say that provokes you is God saying, will you listen and understand why they think that, or why they believe that, or why they say that? Because if you'll understand why, then you can meet them where they are, and you can take me to them in that place. But we never get past the surface, face value. They say something we don't like, we're provoked, we react. They do something we don't like, we're provoked, we react. They believe something we don't like, we're provoked, we react. We have to flip it. You're going to be provoked. People are going to say weird things. People are going to do weird things. People are going to be weird things. So when we're provoked, we say, why did that provoke me? There's a reason. And you say, well, they believe something that's against Jesus. All right. Why? What's their story? How did they get to that place? They hate God. Okay. Why? I'll tell a quick story. Years ago, there was this guy, a lady, girl, woman, I don't know. I'm getting that point in my life, my age, where it's like, I don't know, that girl, woman, I don't know, you know. It's a girl, I guess, woman. She was married. She was 20-something, 30, I don't know. She's friends with my wife, right? Very young, super young, you know. And she came to church by herself. And she would talk about her husband and her husband Adam, and he was a self-proclaimed atheist. And so the wife would come, week in, week out. She was at church. She was close to my wife, Lindsay. There came this point in time where Adam began to come to church some. He was around some. He had nothing in common. He could build things with his hands, I can't. And so, to be honest with you, really didn't have any interest in spending time with him. And Lindsay, she would say, hey, you need to spend some time with this guy. I don't want to spend time with him. She's like, you need to do it. And it's a conversation. And so, next thing you know, my son Rylan and their daughter about the same age. So next thing you know, I'm going to like kids' birthday parties that I don't want to be at, right? Just to try to be nice and be nice to this guy. He's atheist and all this kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, it's like we're going to end up at dinner, with family. And then we're doing like game nights. And it progresses to the point where what his wife had told us, she said, if you try to like share Jesus with him, it ain't happening. He's going to shut it down real fast. And so I settled in my heart, like, that's fine, I ain't going to bring it up. And so we're like 2 years into this thing. We're going on family vacations together. He's at church every week. And I've never asked him anything about Jesus, ever. I just spent time with him. And I remember one night he sends me a text. He said, hey, can we meet for dinner one night this week? Some of you have heard from me. I've led more people to Jesus over pizza than I ever have from a pulpit or a stage. I promise you that. And it's not even close. And he said, could you meet me for dinner? And we go to a pizza place. And this wasn't a normal thing where we're like, you want to go meet for dinner? It's very abnormal. I said, yeah, man. And so we go to this place and we're sitting, we're talking. And his wife is signing him up to go on a mission trip. She was out of control. And it was the type of trip he could go on and be fine. He wasn't going to be in a weird spot or anything, even if someone didn't believe. And we were sitting across the table. He said, I need to tell you something. He said, she signed me up for this mission trip, but I need you to know something. I don't believe this stuff. And I had to pretend like I didn't know. I was like, and I said, okay. And we just began to talk. You know what I learned? It's not he didn't believe in God. He was mad at him. He was mad at him. He had some stuff happen in his life with the one person in his life that was a believer, a follower of Jesus. The one person in his life that was a believer other than his wife. His grandmother, basically a mom figure to him. Some real stuff, bad stuff had happened to her. And she passed away. And he said, I just don't see how a God that's any good, if she loved him, could let that happen to her. He wasn't an atheist. He was just mad. And I get it. So we talked that night. And we fast forward and he ends up going on the mission trip. And it wasn't that long from there. And the Sunday, I remember this, the Sunday after we got back from the mission trip, at the church that day, he professed Jesus. I remember going to lunch from that day. I said, what put you over the edge, man? Like, what finally got you to this place? He said, when we were on that mission trip, there's a 16-year-old kid named Ryan that went. He says, you called on him to pray before dinner. And I just thought to myself, I think I'm overthinking this. And I was like, that's it? Like, that's the thing? That kid's an idiot, It wasn't something profound that I said. No. And here's what I learned through all this. That's what I'll tell you. Is if I wouldn't have, against what I wanted to do, given in and started going to kid birthday parties, I never would have got to know this dude. And God can do whatever he wants to do. For whatever reason, he was using me in that time. And if I tried to force my conversation on him, you need to understand, he would have shut me off. Instead, I said, yeah, God can do what he wants to do. So I'll just trust him. So through game nights, birthday parties, and vacations, I earned the trust of this guy for him to tell me why he thought what he thought. And that is the path that took him to Jesus. And Jesus God reminded me that last little bit, calling that kid to praise, what did it? He reminded me of this. He said, listen, dude, I don't need you. I don't need you. But I'm glad you're here with me on the ride. And so as you go into this next week, Nate last week gave the challenge of who do you need to begin to pray for? Who are the people in your life? Who are the people that you need to begin to seek out and say, I don't know what they believe, or I know what they believe and it's not good. And what do you need to do to listen to them? To begin to hear their story. Because their story is going to tell you everything you need to know about where they are. And once you know where they are, you know how to walk with them to get them where they go, where they need to be. If you want to be somebody that God uses greatly, you're going to have to close your mouth. And you're going to have to listen. And when you find yourself provoked, that's not a license to react. It's a prompting. He said, you feel that? Why do they think that? I need you to notice it. Because God's saying, if you don't feel anything, if there's not a stirring, if there's nothing that provokes you, he said, you're just going to run through that stop sign every time. So you begin, whatever you got to do, write on your hand, put on your forehead, put on your computer screen. Well, I don't know what you need to do. Whatever you need to do to begin to put that check in your life, say, I'm provoked, I'm feeling something, I'm stirred up. What do I do next? How do I understand? And maybe you need to sit down and as simple as like, what are questions I can ask somebody? Maybe it's just not a natural thing for you to sit down and ask questions. That's fine. Plan this sucker. Write down interesting questions. When you go to coffee or dinner or whatever you do, ask the questions and then just listen. Don't look for an opportunity like, oh, there's my chance. Just chill out. God's the one doing the work. You just get to be there while he does it. So whatever you need to do to be a great listener, understand if you're not a great listener, how God's going to use you will be very limited. Not because he doesn't want to, because he can't. We pray for him. We listen to understand. And once we understand, then we know how to respond. My challenge, write it down. How are you going to do this? What's it look like for you? And who's the first person you're going to listen to this week?